Okay, everybody, I figured out what the problem was. Under this new format that they have here, they changed YouTube Studio around. They actually put the go live button under the chat box. So the chat box hides it, and I have to delete the chat box to click go live and then bring the chat box back. Anyways, I know none of you care about that. That's why I was having problems last night. And now I'm back. So now that I know where the go live button is, hidden behind the chat box, which is a dumb design, and there's no way to take it off. So yeah, I'm super happy about that. But hey, everybody, tell me, how many people could get used to this weather out here tonight? Talk to me. Somebody tell me who could get used to this weather. Yeah, it's beautiful outside tonight. All right. Yes, the Whitlings. I saw them on a drive tonight when I was on a walk. And is it Christmas yet? No, it's not even Easter yet, Joe. Sorry, but all right. Well, very good. We'll give everybody a chance to log in here. Tell me, how is praying for God to break the appetite? How is that going? Gene, I'm assuming the chime played tonight because I just heard it play for 8 o'clock. So I'm assuming it played at 7. I was not in the building at 7 o'clock. So I'm guessing that it played like it was supposed to. Tell Daryl I said thank you for coming down to fix that. So, all right. Hey, Dave, Eric, Crystal, Amy. All right. Yeah, no, thank you guys. So, yeah, we got a premiere coming up for worship on Sunday morning. All the stuff is being compiled. You know, I hope all you guys, and I know that you do, but everybody give some love to the people who are working hard to get these the Sunday morning premieres up for worship. There's a lot of work goes into those things, and we started 2 weeks ago to get stuff ready for Sunday, and so everybody thank Josh and thank Kurt for everything, because it takes a lot to get those things together. So yeah, I went for a walk today too, Gene. It did help. Jess, I was here today. Where were you? I thought you were coming over to record today. So yeah, a couple of ibuprofen there, Janine. But yes, it was beautiful out today. I actually ran an errand for some folks at Otterbein today, and I went over to the Kroger and got them some stuff and took it over to them. And I took a bunch of peonies over there. Hey, Gene, email me or text me when this is over. Let's talk about how we're going to do that to get stuff to Josh. Did you camera record it or audio record it? Yeah, Gene, let's talk about that when we're done here tonight and see if I can help. We got to get stuff around. Luke, are you inviting me over for a haircut? I think I'm doing pretty good here. I don't have much hair left to cut anymore, so. Okay, yeah. If you know how to use Dropbox, you can share that with Josh. He should be able to get it. Yes, the errand was done today. I delivered the peonies to Rita, and she was very ecstatically excited. I have a funny story about that. Do we have time for a funny story tonight? I was over at, because we're going to hear it. I mean, so the answer is yes. I was over at Kroger, and I was getting some peonies, and I called, or pansies, I don't know, some flower. And I called Rita ahead of time and said, hey, I'm going to be at Kroger. Do you need anything else? And she told me, I don't know, 4 or 5 things to grab for while I was there, which was fine. So I'm walking through, and suddenly I realized One thing that she asked for was a rotisserie chicken. I thought buying rotisserie chicken it was easy. I didn't think that was going to be a problem until suddenly I walked in and realized I've been a vegetarian for 11 years. I don't know what rotisserie chicken is, and I did not know where to find it. So I was in the chicken section, and it was not in the chicken section. I didn't even know there was a chicken section. But so I stood in the chicken section, and nothing said rotisserie. So I had to ask the lady. There was a worker there, and I said, "Hey, I need some help. I've been a vegetarian for 11 years. I don't know what rotisserie chicken is." And she goes, "Oh, we don't sell that here. We sell that by the deli." So apparently you could go up and buy a whole chicken cooked in rotisserie style. I had no idea. So yeah, I bought some ground beef and some rotisserie chicken, which I've never bought before. And I bought like 3/4 of a pound of lean. What was it? Lean ground chuck, something I don't know, whatever it was. And so that was it. That was my cultural experience for the day. And I managed to get rotisserie style chicken, even though I had no idea what it was or the fact that it's not sold in the chicken section. Hello, Susan Egri. Is this your one comment for the night? We normally get one comment out of her, and hope you all enjoyed it. So, all right. So, Pastor Tim was in the chicken section today and not finding chicken. So there's your takeaway from today. All right. So, Candy, is that rotisserie style chicken? Because don't look for that in the chicken section because it ain't there. I don't know why rotisserie chicken is not in the chicken section, but it isn't. And I don't understand why. So, all right, cool. Okay, well, we're on chapter 2.5 tonight. And yes, should for whatever reason I ever want to buy rotisserie chicken again, I will not go to the chicken section. I will go to the rotisserie chicken section because for some reason that's different. There you go. All right, so let's recap last night for those of you who were not here or maybe need a recap from last night. We're talking about the woman who broke the alabaster jar of perfume and anointed Jesus, preparing him for burial. And there was a big stink about how she, could have sold that and give money to the poor, whatever. And we talked about how that was a sign of her breaking her old life of prostitution and being taken advantage of and hurt and abused by people or by men, and how she was leaving that life behind by breaking that jar, which would have represented a year's salary, which would have been a significant investment. I got a text telling me that I should be going live right now. How about that? So, so that's what we're looking for. Hey, Daryl, welcome. And so that's what we're talking about last night. She broke that as a sign of leaving her old life behind. So he used that as a form of breaking when Jesus takes the old life and breaks it, takes it from us to make room for a new life. And the new life that she was going to live was a life of dignity and respect and people watching out for her and better in every conceivable way. So that's the life she was moving toward. So that was last night when we talk about breaking a life or having life be broken in a good way, in an uplifting way, because clearly she was going to move on to a better situation. So that was last night and the broken perfume. Okay, tonight we're going to talk about breaking again. And tonight I'm going to read to you again from Mark chapter 14. Mark chapter 14. Okay. It's interesting to me that we're talking about these two episodes of things breaking. We're talking about the breaking of that perfume jar. We're also talking about, we're going to be talking about the breaking of bread and what I'm about to read. But if you'll notice, any of you who've got your Bibles open, and if you don't, I can just tell you this. There's a couple verses in between. And which I found to be interesting that Craig makes no reference to them whatsoever. He talks about how, you got the perfume jar, you got the breaking of the bread. But he doesn't make any mention of the fact that what happens between these two episodes of Breaking is a little interlude from everybody's favorite disciple. That's sarcasm. Judas, and how he went to the leading priests at this time, and how excited they were that he was going to betray Jesus, and they offered to pay him, and so on and so forth. So we're going to start here with Mark chapter 14 at verse 12, and we're going to read just a couple of verses here. On the first day of the festival of unleavened bread, the day the Passover lambs were sacrificed, Jesus' disciples asked him, "Where do you want us to go to prepare the Passover supper?" So Jesus sent two of them into Jerusalem to make arrangements. "As you go into the city," you told them. Okay, I'm going to skip through this because I think I started too early. Here we go. Let's skip down to verse 17. Okay, 22. I'm sorry, verse 22. As they were eating, Jesus took a loaf of bread and asked God's blessing on it. Then he broke it into pieces and gave it to the disciples, saying, "Take it, for this is my body." He took a cup of wine and gave it to God. He gave thanks to God for it. He gave it to them. They all drank from it, and he said to them, "This is my blood, poured out for many, sealing the covenant between God and his people. I solemnly declare that you will not drink wine again until the day I drink it anew in the kingdom of God." Then they sang a hymn and went to the Mount of Olives. Okay. Hey, Cheryl and Anna Kay. Appreciate it. Glad you guys are here. So in the old King James Version, it was always "do this in remembrance of me," and that's kind of the old liturgy. So Jesus establishes the sacrament of Holy Communion, something that you all are very familiar with, establishes that as a remembrance. Okay, so when we break the bread and we share the cup, it's a time of remembrance. We are doing this in memory of this thing that Jesus did. Can you name anything else in our world today that we do it in remembrance? Practices we do in remembrance. And anything along this line where we have this communion is an experience of remembering. Can you think of anything else in our world that we do for the purposes of remembering? Right? Got anything? What do we do for the purpose of remembering something or commemorating something or someone or some event? Okay, the 4th of July. That's a good one. Remember the birth of our country. Excellent. We do fireworks and cookouts and things. Perfect. Funeral eulogies. Yeah, that's a specific remembrance, but absolutely we do that in remembrance. Memorial Day. I mean, the very name of it is about remembering those who fell in defense of our country. Veterans Day, again, much like Memorial Day, we got the 4th of July. The Pledge of Allegiance. Yes, we say that, and probably more in honor of our country, but you're definitely in the right track there. All the holidays, we got Memorial Day, Christmas, remembering Christ's birth. All Saints Day is a big one. All Saints Day, the first day in November, is the day we remember those who have passed away since the last time. We sing the Star Spangled Banner. That's a remembrance of our country. Gather together. We, depending on the purpose, we could gather together for lots of things. Memorial Day, yeah. So you guys get the idea. So we have, even in our modern times, we have time set aside. Something I was thinking of that you guys didn't say were like birthdays. There's a lot of traditions that go with birthdays, cakes and ice cream and parties and streamers and all that stuff. Yeah, there's birthdays and anniversaries, remembering significant days. So all of that stuff is designed to help us remember important things about our country, important things about things that have happened, important things about people who have made significant contributions to our world, even personally, birthdays and anniversaries and wedding celebrations, baptisms, all of those things are done in remembrance. So remembering is very important. I forget who said the famous quote, but you've all heard it. Those who don't know history are destined to repeat it. And that's a statement that's proved true every day. It seems like people who don't take time to understand where we came from do it over. And even in the Old Testament, we saw that Like when God was leading Moses and the Israelites through the desert, and they were going to keep doing it until they got it right. And it certainly took enough tries to get them there. So speaking of remembrance, and you guys hammered that question, very good. Speaking of remembrance, what would you like to be remembered for? I mean, when people, maybe your kids or your grandkids or coworkers or people you've influenced, people you've been around for whatever reason, what do you want them to remember about you? I mean, all these things that you mentioned, a lot of them were remembering wars, remembering people who served in wars, remembering our country, remembering specific people through birthdays and funeral eulogies and all these different things. Uh, when that moment comes that somebody is remembering you, what do you want them to remember? Okay, being compassionate and giving heart, yes. I think you're well on your way to that. Turning my life from dark to light, cool hand Luke. That's a great thing to be remembered for. The fact that you were able to be a living example of what repentance can do. Fantastic. What other kind of things would you like to be remembered for? Unconditional love of your family. Okay, I think many of us would agree with that, Cheryl, about want to be remembered as a good person by the people who love us the most and we love the most. Certainly. What else would you like to be remembered for? Teresa says she loved people through prayer and was a blessing, of course. Candy, kindness and love for others. People see Christ through me. Parker, good answer. Being caring, Audra. I think many of you are well on your way to these things. So the question then becomes is, if that's what you want to be remembered for, and then we'll let this question be rhetorical, are you living into that? If that's what you want to be remembered for, are you living into that? Okay. Good, Eric. Dedicated, being disciple, great, kindness and patience and a caring heart, Kim. If we all could be so lucky to be remembered for those kinds of things. But the question is, if that's the way we want to be remembered, is that what we're living into? Is that what we are investing ourselves in? And and to be honest, we do better some days than others. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. But yeah, kindness, caring, compassionate nurse. Okay, very good, Anna Kay. Candy's living that every day through the Family Life Center. I have no question about that. So you can see these things are, are things that take work. Nobody's going to remember me for being a great surgeon because I'm not. Never have been and won't be. So, cool hand Luke here. Big picture, yes. Snapshots, no. That's well said. Paula wants to be remembered for always willing to help, do anything, love others. Linda wants to be helpful and caring. Yeah, see? And these things are constant. I think, yeah, Luke, I think you've got kind of handle on this. In the big picture, we all get these things right, but any particular day, a snapshot might reveal a flaw in the logic, but that happens. But I think overall, we all can agree that many times we have goals we want to live into, and that's part of having God break us. Part of the breaking process is about bringing those things to the forefront. All right, Amy's showing off now. Love God, love people, change the world. Where have I heard that before? Yeah, that's the Wayne Street mission statement. So very good. So, all right. So you guys got that. And it's important to live into those things because, the only way you're going to be known for doing something by actually doing it. That's going to be my profound statement for the night. If you want to be known for doing something, you actually have to do it. If you want to have that reputation, you actually have to do it. And that's why those things are important. Okay. If you got the book and you're following along, and if not, that's fine. I think it's the next paragraph here. He says, notice exactly what Jesus did. The next sentence I want to point out to you. The next sentence says, he broke the bread and explained that this breaking symbolized what would happen to him. Okay, let me read that sentence for you again. He broke the bread and explained that this breaking symbolized what would happen to him. Again, since it's a remembrance, it's something that we do in remembrance of. He says, I want you to remember me. That's part of what's going on here. But don't just remember Jesus, he says. He says, remember what happened. And here's what happened. And he breaks the bread. And it's in that moment that we remember what happened to him. We remember the fact that he gave us the ultimate gift. We remember the fact that he offered us forgiveness of sin. He did all these things. It was very important. And because honestly, there'd be no point in being a Christian. I mean, being a Christian is great. It'll pay dividends in this life. It'll do things to improve your life now, make you a better person. I agree with every bit of that. However, if it wasn't for the eternal ramifications of following Christ, it would just be a good thing to do. But now our faith actually changes things. I mean, changes things on a big scale, because now we have the opportunity to talk about eternity and talk about the blessing of forever and the forgiveness of sin and the reuniting with family. That stuff wouldn't be available without the intervention of Christ. So that's what we are remembering. That's why we are doing this in remembrance of him. Okay. Now, in the second part, he talks about his blood being shed. Where am I at? Skip down about 1.5 paragraphs. I'm in the paragraph that starts like the bread he broke at the table, Jesus' body would be broken. And we know that there's two parts of communion. We have the bread, which is the broken body. We also have the cup, which is the shed blood. The shed blood is goes along with obviously when the body breaks, it's going to shed blood. I mean, even if you cut yourself, you already are very familiar with that. So in this, the breaking of the bread was to give us the example of Christ, but the blood was something a little different. I mean, not radically different, but it represented a different piece of the gift. It represents the atoning quality of Christ, meaning we were separated from God. There was a chasm. There was an uncrossable chasm between us and God. And so when Jesus' body was broken, it was broken to show us the transgression of sin. However, it was the blood that closed the chasm. So when his innocent blood was shed, that the chasm between us and God was now was no longer. Now, in one of the Gospels, the Gospel of Matthew, we're going to have a Bible trivia question, all right? We'll see who can get this right. In the Bible, after Jesus died, there was something that happened that showed that God and humanity were brought back together. It's from the Gospel of Matthew. It's a very clear symbol, something that happened that gave a very clear sign that God and humanity were brought back together. Who can tell me what that sign was? Who knows? It's recorded in the Gospel of Matthew. The curtain was torn. Cool Hand Luke is our winner. And how was it torn? It wasn't just ripped. It was torn in a very specific way. Yep. Teresa, Candy got that one. How was it torn? How was that curtain torn? Top to bottom. There you go. All right, you guys got it. Excellent. And the reason, and the thing you got to keep in mind, we think of curtains like this thing here behind me. Honestly, I could take a hold of that with my hands and tear it. Okay. It's not. It's nice, but it's not exactly the most durable fabric ever created. When they made curtains in the ancient world, particularly these curtains, you want to think more like what do I want to say? More like a tarp. I mean, we're talking something heavy. If you read back in the Old Testament how they hung that curtain probably weighed a couple of 100 pounds because it was huge, and the fabric was very heavy. So it couldn't be torn because it wasn't supposed to be. But we know that not only was it too strong to tear by human hands, also given how high the curtain was, it wouldn't have torn from the top. If somebody would have ripped it, as you all well know, it would have torn from the bottom. So basically, Jesus's blood, I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, allowed God to escape. God got out. Once the forgiveness, once grace was now part of the equation, which grace had not been part of the equation before. Once grace was excuse me, once grace was a part of the picture and our sin was no longer in the way, God got out and God left aggressively by ripping the curtain and leaping out into the world and just changed everything. We know, whether it be the sermon at Pentecost or whether it be John's gospel, it was just slightly different. But at that point, the Holy Spirit became a real thing. The fire of the Holy Spirit, the fact that we can now commune directly with God, all that's new and happened because of that broken body and shed blood. That was an entirely new phenomenon that did not exist before. And so when Jesus died and grace, because of his blood that was shed, the price was paid. Jesus wrote a blank check. Once that sin was no longer an issue, God got out, and that changed everything. And now we have not only grace, but now we have the Holy Spirit, which is where we have the current work of God in our world, the current work of the Spirit, the current work of Christ, who is continually sanctifying us to be able to move us on toward perfection, as John Wesley would say. So that's what we remember in communion. So when we say, do this in remembrance of me, we are remembering that. The fact that Jesus' body was broken to show us the price of our sin, that his blood was shed to offer us grace, so that in that act, that curtain was no longer relevant. It was now just a big, heavy piece of fabric. And God said, I'm out of here, and tore it. And as you all well know, that curtain tore on Good Friday, but that wasn't the last time God said, I'm out of here. There's also a very specific time when Jesus said, I'm out of here. What was it, like 3 days later? And turned everything on its head another time. Because now not only was there grace, not only was there the presence of God, now there was this word called eternity and abundant life that was, again, entirely new. And what a gift that turned out to be. So, all right. Now, all right. So, if you skip on over, if you're following along in the book, skip over, I don't know, a couple of paragraphs. Paragraph that starts, almost all Bible scholars agree. Like the second half of the first sentence there says, do this provides believers a way to remember, honor, and celebrate Jesus' death and resurrection. I mean, again, we've kind of been talking about that the whole time, so I think y'all get that. It's a remembrance. It's a chance for us to be moved. Much like any of you who have lost loved ones in a war or have loved ones currently serving in the armed forces, things like the 4th of July and Memorial Day, those things take on much added significance because now they become personal. And in those remembrances, things like giving honor to the pledge and singing the national anthem take on a whole new meaning when you've got that much invested. Communion is the same. So much was invested, so much was paid, so much went into that should be something very moving to us. I mean, look, and I'm going to say this again when we get to the end of the study tonight, but we're going to serve communion on Sunday. So everybody make sure you get your communion elements, because part of the broadcast on Sunday morning in both services is going to be the blessing and sharing of communion. So make sure you have your elements there. And we'll have, for the first time in Pastor Tim's career, him blessing from afar. And something I would never have considered a month ago. But that's how we're going to do it. And while that's going to be awesome, and it's going to be a great time to remember, especially since it's going to be Palm Sunday, and we're going to talk about all that, it's going to be very cool. But I want you to take just a moment, and in your mind's eye, I want you to envision, I don't know when it will be, but the first time that we are legitimately back together and we're going to have communion together. Can you imagine what that will be like? How much we've taken that for granted. Oh, it's first Sunday in the month and we're breaking the bread. Give some thought to that, because it's coming. It's going to happen. There's going to be some point we're going to be back together. I don't know when it will be, and I'm not even going to speculate or try to guess, but it's going to happen at some point. And in your mind's eye, I want you to see that moment when we step into the aisle, come down to the front of our beautiful sanctuary while either the band plays or Daryl plays, depending on which service you're in. And it's going to be incredible. And it is going to happen eventually. And that's what we have to hang on to. We are going to have a great time of remembrance together on that day. So do this in remembrance of me. When you break the bread and share the cup, the one thing Jesus asks us to do is remember. Memory is extremely important because it's what we remember that makes all the difference. Now, Craig then takes this. I haven't said anything, nothing we've talked about in the first half hour we've been here has been radical. Nothing off the wall. Nothing where you all go, gosh, I never thought about that before. It's things we've all done. You know, the idea of remembering Jesus. If you've been in confirmation, you certainly have talked about that. So that's not necessarily a earth-shattering realization. Okay, it's cool to think about, cool to talk about, but again, not terribly radical, not terribly different from what you've heard. I thought the same thing about this chapter till I got to this point. But he takes this to a second level, and I've been serving communion for decades now, and I never thought of it this way before. The second theme that he talks about what this means to do this in remembrance of me. And he kind of really got me thinking. Unfortunately, I have already recorded the lines or recorded the stuff for Sunday, or else I'd be stealing this and using it. So this is what I'm about to share with you is going to be coming soon to a communion service near you. Is going to be this idea because I love this and I had never heard it put the way he puts it before. All right, without further ado, let me tell you what that is. When Jesus was at the Last Supper and he gave the explanation of this is my body broken for you, and he was using the example of his own life. When he said, do this in remembrance of me, yes, he meant remember me when you're participating in communion. Okay, clearly nobody's disagreeing with that. But what if he meant have your life break like mine in remembrance of me? Just like his body was about to break and he was about to literally put it all out there. Do that in remembrance of me. Let your life be broken and poured out in remembrance of me. That doesn't mean you got to go sacrifice yourself, but it does mean that there's a level of faithfulness that goes into that. So Jesus is saying, not only am I doing for you what you could not do for yourself because you were never going to earn grace, period. That's not negotiable. You can't do it. But there is a sacrifice you can make. There is a place you can go. There is a service you can perform. So whatever it is, do this, whatever that is, do that in remembrance of me. Takes communion to a whole new level now that when you think about it. Because that's what kind of blew me away in this chapter was about how awesome that is. Now communion becomes more than a remembrance. It's still a remembrance. I'm not removing that level of meaning. But he goes on to say, allow your life to be broken as well. And I mean, that clearly fits into not only fits into the framework of this book that we're working through, but it also fits into the framework of Mark chapter 14. Because that is exactly what the lady did when she broke the perfume bottle. Okay, so that's exactly what she did. Do this, spill the perfume on the ground. My old life is gone. It is broken. It doesn't exist anymore. Jesus says, do this in remembrance of me. Jesus's life is about to take a radical change because his ministry on earth is about through. It's just hours of being done. Now, Jesus wasn't through, but this piece of his life was through. So he basically, emptied himself, as you guys are saying here. He emptied himself, and he says, basically, do as I do in remembrance of me. That's what do this in remembrance of me means. And I thought, wow, that's That's pretty that's pretty good actually. Um, yeah, I'm seeing you guys are resonating with that. That's very cool. And I thought, gosh, I mean, and one of the things that I always say, and now it takes on more meaning than I realized, was communion always begins with an invitation. The invitation is not from this guy. The invitation is from God. Well, now I realize what that invitation is for. Is it an invitation to remember Jesus? Yes, of course. But it's also an invitation to allow your life to be broken and poured out just like Christ's. Now, your broken and poured out may not accomplish as much as his broken and poured out did. Come in second place to Jesus. I think you can live with that. But the idea here is that there's still some way you can be faithful in this way. That's not an impossibility. There's a chance here that there's something that you can do, and I think that's a great invitation. So much has been given, and I don't know that anyone would disagree with that. So much has been given, so now do what has been done for you. Do this in remembrance of me. I'm never going to hear that line the same way again, and I say that twice a month. I'll never hear that the same way again, because now the invitation is do as I have done. Don't just remember what I did. You do it too. And it comes back to the book of James says, don't just hear the word, do it. And that makes communion sound very much the same as that. What an invitation! What a challenge that is. And the really cool thing about that is this is not a command from Jesus that Jesus says, no, you ought to do this. I'm not going to do it, but you can do it because you all know. And the events of Holy Week, which is coming up next week, there's a lot there. And Jesus did it first, set the example. And again, his death accomplished infinitely more than anything we're ever going to be able to do will accomplish. However, even though we may not get to that level, that certainly doesn't mean nothing. As Teresa says here, take up your cross and follow. It's the same invitation. Communion is the same invitation. I'm embarrassed to say I'd never thought of it that way before. But that's quite the challenge. Do as I have done in remembrance of me. Anybody got any reflection on that? I feel like I'm letting you guys off easy. I'm not making you talk very much tonight. My closing question for you, and we're not there yet, but when we get to the end of this lesson, I'm going to ask you, what is this for you? Jesus says, do this in remembrance of me. Our last piece of the conversation before we get to the closing stuff is going to be, what is this? What is this to you? You still have to listen to me, but be thinking about, what is this? And I want a whole bunch of you. There's 34 of you in here right now. I want you all to chime in. Tell me what this is. If it's do this, what is this? What is going to be broken in your life? What is this to you? All right, I've harped on that long enough. It's just really good. It's just good stuff. And I really want to take time with that. Now, he goes on from that chapter or that paragraph. The next paragraph starts with, this may not sound appealing at first glance. I think we all would say amen to that. The idea of having our life broken and poured out doesn't exactly sound super appealing. So, all right, pop quiz. Here's a question I'm going to ask based on the sentence I'm about to read. So everybody listen to this sentence, and then we're going to have a pop quiz about the sentence, okay? But it's in the giving of our lives that we find true joy. Now, talking about do this in remembrance of me, that's giving it all. That's laying it out there, Define what part of our life might be valuable to somebody else, just like Jesus, what Joe tells us there, okay? Excellent. That's great. So here's the sentence. But it's in the giving of our lives that we find true joy. So we find true joy in pouring out our lives in this way. That's where our joy is found. Here's the pop quiz. True or false? But it's in the giving of our lives that we find true joy. True or false? True or false? It is in the giving of our lives that we find true joy. True or false? It's in the giving of our lives that we find true joy. True or false? Ooh, we got some A pluses coming in here. I would agree. It is true. So my question becomes, as it was before, do we live that? If we believe that statement is true, which y'all just said you did, and I lured you into that, the challenge becomes then, do you live that? Do you do this in remembrance of him? That I'm going to let that be rhetorical, because that's a tough one. You know, we all can identify that it's in the giving of our lives that we find true joy. And if we're give 1% of honesty here, of course it is. I mean, that's not even surprising, because selfishness is the most awful life to live. You know, again, but no explanation needed. We get it. So the question becomes then, do we live this? And what happens when we don't? And I'll go ahead and answer that one for you. The word is misery. That's where you end up. So if you don't do this in remembrance of him, misery is what you embrace. The misery of self. And yeah. Okay, yeah, you guys are getting it. Kuhan, Luke, Teresa, and Cheryl. Yeah, giving. Giving is where it's at. Giving is where joy is found. And again, that is so contrary. That is so contrary to what the world tells you. I mean, it is 180 degrees right in the face of the gospel of the world to say that you experience true joy in giving. But anybody who's tried it, even just one time, as Joe Sutton will tell you, that's how it works. And it rarely ever fails. You know, there's no guarantees in this life, but that's about as close to one as you're going to get right there. And so does it make sense during the sacrament of communion, where Jesus is about to give in a way that no one ever has before or ever will again given, that he says, remember me by doing this. Do this in remembrance of me. Why? Because it's good for you. And if you will give just one shadow of honesty, you know it too. The world knows it too. You know, the devil has lied to a lot of people to talk them out of giving and tried to help them see that true joy is about satisfying whatever narcissistic tendency you can come up with. It is as fake as it gets. It is a level of fakeness that is just stifling. And people live with that, and they convince themselves they're happy when they're not. And every one of you in this chat room right now know that. And this is a good refresher. So, yes, it's fake news. Thank you, Luke. Yeah, it's fake news. Fake news is selfishness is joy. That's fake news. And call it what it is. So, all right. No politics. I don't want any politics in my chat room. So, all right. Okay. He goes on to talk about his friends Jerome and Shannon. Yeah, Joyce, I couldn't agree more. Going to the altar for communion is about the most beautiful thing there is. A selfish life ends up a lonely life. Candy, yeah, that sentence will preach. Absolutely. Yeah. And okay, go help somebody who's less fortunate, and you find out that you're lucky, and that's true. And Joe brightens up smiles and stuff. Hey, I tell you what, my favorite thing I did today was go deliver those flowers to Rita. I just that was great. Rita was there, and Dixie Moots was there, and I had to stay away from both of them, and I had my bank robber mask on because I couldn't breathe on either one of them. But they were so happy to see me, and just I show up with a couple dollars worth of flowers, and you think I brought them a pot of gold, and those are the kind of things that we do because they matter. And I would not have gone and bought flowers. I don't plant flowers because my opinion is God made two kinds of plants: the kinds that you eat and weeds. That's it. He didn't make any other kinds. And go ahead and flame on me in the chat room. That's fine. But so I'm just telling you that's not something I would naturally have done, but felt really good to do it, even though it was out of character for me. And to be able to give, and I knew it would. That's why I did it. I didn't question it for a second. As soon as Angie called me about the fact that Rita wanted some flowers, it's all over it because I knew it was safer for me to go to Kroger than anybody else. So um, it went and it was great. And I would encourage you, if you got an if you have an elderly neighbor, um, man, just go contact them, see what they can get for them. Both of my neighbors, I've been checking in with them and seeing where they're at. The smile does show through the bandana. Yes, it does. Because they knew how happy I was. And in fact, they wanted to see my face. So I actually went out and stood in the street and pulled the mask down. I don't know if they thought I had grown a goatee, beard or something once the thing started. But yeah, so this face was the best thing I had, and they wanted to see it. So I pulled the mask down, but I made sure I was back far enough to do that because that's the dumb world we live in now. But the idea is that I did this in remembrance of him, and I loved it. It was great. And don't ever cheat yourself out of the opportunity to give. Again, a sentence the world would call me stupid for saying, but y'all know it's right. And it's not right because I said it. It's right because Jesus said it when he said, "Do this in remembrance of me." So, all right, you guys get me all wound up here tonight, and I love it. All right, so he goes on in his little book here to a section where he talks about two of his friends named Jerome and Shanna. And they had taken in children in need, hurting kids, and I was a foster parent for a while. I know some of you may have done that a time in your life, and boy, that's hard work. That is hard work. And so my heart goes out to them because I know just how hard this is. And they know Jerome and Shanna. He says the very last sentence in that paragraph. He says Jerome and Shanna know firsthand the blessing of living broken and poured out. Explain that sentence. Jerome and Shannon know firsthand the blessing of living broken and poured out. They knew the blessing of living broken and poured out. Somebody give me a interpretation of that sentence. Hey, thank you, Joe. Somebody give me an interpretation of that sentence. Jerome and Shannon knew firsthand the blessing of living broken and poured out through their work in the foster care system. Jerome and Shannon knew firsthand the blessing of living broken and poured out. I know you have to type more than true or false. That's why I'm trying to hesitate here, give you a chance to type. Jerome and Shannon knew firsthand the blessing of living broken and poured out. Okay, sacrificing their personal lives for children, I would say, Cool Hand Luke. There was more than just one, but yes, you're definitely on the right track. They knew what it was like to give that up to be able to help. Giving back, helping others, certainly, Eric. They knew the blessing. They knew the blessing of doing this in remembrance of him. Yeah, when you give beyond yourself to someone, change someone's life, absolutely, Teresa, and many of us know that. Yeah, receiving blessing because of it, Cheryl, exactly. The blessing of doing this in remembrance of him. Yeah, the joy outweighed the sacrifice, Susan, and I think that's what they saw. Even though the sacrifice was tremendous, um, they knew they were making a difference, and that's a great blessing. Okay, so I'm going to read a piece of this next paragraph to you because I have a question I'd like to ask about it, and depending on how long this takes, we may skip to the end. So it's difficult to imagine what the disciples must have thought and felt in that moment with God's Son gathered around the table. They didn't want him to die. Most probably, they didn't believe that he would. So I wonder if memories of things Jesus said previously flooded into their minds. You know, things that Jesus had taught prior to that, and going, oh, wow, now that makes sense. So think about today, where we are today, okay? And where we are in the world today, where we are with the gospel of Christ and the church and all these things. How much power would the gospel of Jesus Christ lose if we didn't have the sacrament of communion? How much power would the gospel lose if we didn't have the sacrament of communion? Because there are some Christian denominations that don't observe sacraments. You know, they don't do it. Yeah, I remember growing up. You know, we did communion once a quarter because we had to. That was the church I grew up in, and yeah, and okay, you're right. The system is broken, and maybe the best we got, but you're right. It's tough. Um, yeah, Kim, pouring yourself into a situation, helping kids the best you can. Yes, Darvin, I'm sure you do remember that, Trina. Very much what you guys did for that little guy. How much power would the gospel lose without communion? No, Luke, that's interesting. Yeah, it would leave us with Christmas and Easter only. I thought of it that way, but that's exactly right. We would have the high time celebrations and nothing to sustain us because that's what the sacrament of communion does. It's something that we can, you know, carry with us, so to speak, that can go with us, you know, during the thick and the thin of life. And I think, especially with the call of communion, the whole "do this in remembrance of me." I think, yeah, you're right. It wouldn't leave us much else to go on. And yeah, the personal connection with Christ, yeah, and with each other too. I agree with both of those things, Cheryl. And I think that that gives us, yeah, less personal. You guys are all functioning on the same, firing on the same piston here. I love that. So it would take a big piece of the personal out of it because communion in a worship setting, you can make the argument that maybe, with the exception of singing, communion is the most participatory part of worship. It's a chance when we get to respond, you know, and sometimes come forward depending on how we decide to serve. But it gives a chance for a personal reflection, a personal movement to go forward and participate. So, oh, it is seriously almost 9 o'clock. I got a few more notes on this chapter. This was a particularly good chapter. I know I said that last night. Would we have the cross as a symbol without communion? Or possibly not. Possibly not. Yep, communion is the gel that holds us together. And yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, you guys got it. So again, that underscores very, very, very clearly the importance of communion and the importance of being binded together around the cross of Christ. I mean, that's just, it's very, very important. So, all right, I got, like I said, I have a few more notes here and some things to go on. I didn't quite get this whole chapter. This chapter was very, very good. And, you know, as Kim says here, it helps us remember what he did for us, keep it up front and personal. Oh, the Episcopal Church does it every Sunday. Yeah, it depends on which Episcopal church you go to. But yeah, and I know there are some denominations, again, like the Methodist Church I grew up in, we did it once a quarter and we complained about it because we didn't like it. You know, I didn't understand it very well then, but that's kind of how different traditions deal with sacraments differently. Okay, I do want to take our last just a couple minutes here and go back to that question. What is this? This is a pronoun. Pronouns, by definition, are not specific. You have to interpret them in order to understand. If I say he did this or she did that, the context has to tell you who he or she is. Well, this is also a pronoun in the way it's used in the sentence. Do this in remembrance of me. So if this sentence were to be spoken to the 34 of you who are here, what is this? And are you willing to be broken around whatever this is? Because the woman we talked about yesterday her life was broken and healed, given respect. And maybe you don't want to answer tonight, and that's okay, but I want you to take that question with you. What is this? If Jesus says, do this in remembrance of me, what is this? Because it can't be, whatever's right in front of me right now. No, there has to be a this. It has to be specific. What is this? Because if you don't know what this is, you can't do it. So if we're doing this in remembrance of him, I used to interpret that as just meaning the meal, the piece of bread and the little grape juice. That's what I used to think this was. Now I think there's more to it than that. So this is a challenge. We did a session, talked a little bit yesterday about God breaking our appetite. What around your appetite could be this, and remember what this, do this in remembrance of me. What about our appetite could be that? Yeah, to be his hands and feet and surrender. Yeah, those are great things, but they're not specific. I'd like for you guys, and maybe I'll make that the challenge for tonight. As we're continuing to pray about God breaking our appetites, maybe God to speak to us about this. What is your this? That's a great sermon title. What is your this? You guys are giving me a lot of good ideas here. Yep, cool hand Luke, and that's a great thing to do, but I still say it's not specific. Reminder of God's love and sacrifice. Again, great answer. Pulling needs of family above self. That's a little more specific. Life and calling. And these are all great answers, and I agree with every one of them. But I think in order to be broken around them, they have to be specific. And I think that I don't know that you're going to want to write anything specific in the chat room. Maybe you will, but what's your this? Serve, taking care of children. No one else wants to, Cheryl, and I find that not surprising at all that you came up with that answer. But the idea here is, and that's a very specific answer, so it's a good one. But what is the this in your life, the specific this you're willing to be broken around? For the lady we talked about yesterday, it was her old life. That was the this she was willing to be broken around. We said do this. For her, it was get out of that life. Get away from those men. Don't be abused and used by them anymore. That was the this for her. So when she broke that jar and burned up an entire year's worth of salary on pouring that stuff out, that was her this. And being broken around that this changed her life. And Jesus was so pleased that he wouldn't allow those men to throw her out, even though they wanted to. It pleased Christ to see that this lady got a this, a this that she was willing to be broken around, to say, I'm not gonna be that way anymore. My new this is the new life, or I'm going to be treated like I deserve to be treated. Okay, Eric, good. Kids graduating from high school is good. Do this, listening to your stomach hunger instead of emotional hunger. That's a pretty big this right there. Depends on the day, but you have to be aware of the now and those around you, Joe. I agree. I agree that this may not always be consistent every single day. But I am convinced after reading this excellent chapter that God throws a this at us every day, at least one, if not multiples. And it's a scary question and it has a tough answer. Cool Hand Luke, you're right. But without the this, there's nothing to be broken over. And it's not only, I mean, the this could be my appetite. I mean, we can use that as an example because we've already talked about it. My appetite is the this that I need to be broken around. I don't need to eat 7 boxes of Twinkies today because that's not good for me. Therefore, I'm going to be broken around this specific this. I'm not going to allow my appetite to control me anymore. At the same time, you may see a situation that's bad, and God may want you to be involved. So you have to say, I will do this in remembrance of Him. I will save this person in remembrance of Him. I will help this person in remembrance of Him. I will not do this to myself in remembrance of Him. I will go to bed on time in remembrance of Him. I will read this book in remembrance of Him. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, I will log in to see Tim's head talk to me for an hour. I will do this in remembrance of Him. Sunday morning, I'm going to tune in and hear Daryl and Jean sing some songs, and we're going to have communion and a sermon together. I will do this in remembrance of Him. That line really takes on some significant meaning when you think of it this way. I mean, that's deep stuff. And so whatever your this is becomes very significant because whatever the this is God sends your way, whether it be a personal this or a public this, can be broken. You can be broken. And if that happens, if God gives you a this and you end up breaking your life over it, you will never be happier ever than in that moment. As contradictory as that sounds, that woman, when she broke that expensive jar of perfume, was never happier in her life than she was at that moment. When Jesus stood around the table with 12 confused disciples, including one that was about to go sell him out, Peter was about to 3 times say, Jesus, who? The rest of them are going to run and hide. Most of them, we don't even know what happened to them. We can only have tradition because they're so not mentioned in the gospel. Jesus says, do this in remembrance of me. He wasn't looking forward to what was about to happen. But when he said, do his this, he's never happier than when he was faithful to that. Faithful to his this. Yes, absolutely, Joe. I couldn't agree more. Your this should not always be the same. Because once you are broken over your this, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean the situation is over, but that particular brokenness is over. When that woman yesterday broke that alabaster jar and poured that perfume out, her this was over. It was over. She was done. She was done with all that. And she walked away from that life because she was broken over her this. Her this was get out of this life. And she did, got out of the life of prostitution. And when she broke that, and all those guys are like just aghast at what she had done, she was never happier because that was a broken old life that she left the pieces on the ground and walked away from it. Buddy, you want to feel powerful? That's how you do it. So her this got her a whole new life. Your this could do the same. And that's why Jesus says, do this in remembrance of me. What's your this? I want that on a t-shirt. You guys want that on a t-shirt? What's your this? That's a great slogan. Gosh, that's going to come back sometime. Sometime I'm going to have the What's Your This campaign, and you all have to pretend like I came up with that on my own because it's awesome. And because that's just how we roll right here at Wayne Street. So that's a great slogan. I mean, I can see that on a t-shirt. What's your this? What do you guys think? Let's vote. Vote in the chat room. What's your this? Would you guys like to see a campaign around that? Maybe once we get past COVID-19 and start coming back together, our opening campaign when you come back could be what's your this? First century mic drop for that woman. Exactamundo, Luke. Yeah. What's your this? Hmm. I'd like to say I came up with that, but I think Jesus actually, did that one, and I don't want to really steal any credit from him. So, new Summerfest T-shirts. What's your this? I'm liking this. Since the Mom's Day 5K is canceled, we're not doing T-shirts for that now. So maybe we'll have to turn around and do some Wayne Street T-shirts since we're not going to have Mom's Day 5K shirts. I would hoping for. All right, Joe, you're our first order, and they're only $49.95 a piece. Yes, Kim, that would stir a lot of interest. What's your this? We could tie that to communion. Hmm. Well, let me tell you. Just today, I published the first. Very generous, Joe. Thank you. Uh, just today, I published a sermon series that's coming up after Easter. We are doing a sermon series on the Book of Ruth. It is the title of it is the 7 C's of God's Plan. The 7 C's of how God's plan works are commitment, courage, conviction, confidence, celebration, and conclusion. So that will be the 6 sermons after that, which will get us to Memorial Day. So we may launch the What's Your This campaign for over the summer. Starting hospitality, yeah. Cookies, yeah. I left that C one out, Joe. Dang it. Yes, God's plan works through commitment, courage, conviction, confidence, celebration, and conclusion. And we're going to look at that through the lens of the Book of Ruth. So that'll take us to Memorial Day. So then after Memorial Day, we will go to the What's Your This campaign. And we may be doing that around Moses because I wanted to do Moses over the summer anyways. I wanted to do Summer of the Exodus. That's what I've been thinking about. So, and we can tie that to the What's Your This campaign. You guys gave me a lot. I'm not going to sleep at all tonight. You guys got my brain running now. So cool. I love it. So anyways, I want you to think about that, about what we want to do. I want you all to ponder on that question. That's going to be my opening question to you tomorrow night at 8:00 is what's your this? Because I really think that's the question Jesus begs to ask. And that's a powerful statement. So Joe, I hope that comment was to Audra. I'm hope. Oh, Ruth is my book. Yes, it was. So Joe and Audra, you guys enjoy being at the threshing floor. That's awesome. The Summer of Exodus. That sounds like a 70s rock album. Yeah. Well, I have done some Billy Joel. So yeah, we aren't going to revisit that. So cool. Hey, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for coming out and listening to me ramble for an hour. I appreciate you making the effort to be here. Plan is to be here tomorrow night, 8:00, and then Sunday morning, and then Sunday night. And I've been getting a lot. I won't say a lot. I've been getting a fair amount of feedback from these nightly meetings, and since I've had over 30 of you logged in all night tonight on a Friday evening, I appreciate. I appreciate you guys being here for these. Yeah, we'll miss you guys tomorrow night, Joe and Audra. But I appreciate you guys making the effort to be here. It's very awesome that you do this. And, and we're going all day without talking to anybody or seeing anybody. It's just nice to be together. So have a this kind of night. Nice, Trina. Yeah, it works in lots of ways. Yes. Daryl, you beat me to it. I'm still going to say it, though. So, hey, cool. All right. Well, I love you all very much. I deeply and sincerely appreciate you taking the time to come out. I'm enjoying this book, whether you have the book or not. I hope you're enjoying these conversations. I appreciate you all being here. I wouldn't do it without you, but here we are. And I want everybody to have a good night's sleep tonight. Tomorrow's Saturday. It looks like it's going to be beautiful. Everybody, I want to see some suntans tomorrow night. And everybody have a good day outside and just enjoying yourself, enjoying your family. So appreciate you all being here. And y'all know what you need to do now, right? Go wash your hands and wash them good.